What happens when the most feared gunslinger of the West is forced into a marriage that neither heart nor fate expected? Behind every legend lies a hidden truth waiting to be uncovered. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from, and why you're following this. The sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty streets of Redemption Creek, a small town nestled between rugged mountains and endless plains in Montana Territory. 1875. Clara Winters stood frozen on her porch, the letter in her trembling hands bearing news that would forever alter her fate. Her father, once a prosperous rancher, had gambled away their land, their home, and most devastatingly her freedom. "You can't possibly mean this, Father," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant sound of horses and wagons. Her blue eyes, usually bright with determination, now clouded with disbelief. Samuel Winters couldn't meet his daughter's gaze. His shoulders, once proud and straight, now slumped with shame. "I had no choice, Clara. Judge Harrison has agreed to forgive my debts if you marry his son." "Ethan Harrison?" Clara's blood ran cold. Everyone in 3 territories knew that name. The infamous gunslinger whose reputation was built on notches in his belt and the bodies he'd left behind. The man they call the Raven? "Father, he's a killer." Samuel ran a weathered hand through his graying hair. "He's also our only chance. The wedding is set for Sunday. 3 days?" Clara felt her legs weaken beneath her. "You've given me 3 days before selling me to a monster? You don't understand the position we're in," Samuel pleaded. "Judge Harrison controls everything in this county. If I don't honor this agreement, we'll both be thrown into the street or worse." Clara turned away, tears stinging her eyes. At 22, she had dreamed of love, of building a life with someone who cherished her. Instead, she was to be handed over to a man whose name made. Mothers hold their children closer and caused hardened men to step aside when he walked down the street. That evening, Clara sat by her window, watching the sunset paint the western sky in hues of orange and purple. The beauty seemed a cruel contrast to the darkness closing in around her life. Her closest friend, Sarah Miller, the shopkeeper's daughter, sat beside her. "There must be something we can do," Sarah insisted, her round face flushed with indignation. "You could run away. My cousin in Denver would take you in." Clara shook her head. "And leave my father to face the Harrisons alone? They'd kill him, Sarah. You know they would. But to marry Ethan Harrison... Sarah shuddered. "They say he's killed 20 men, that he never speaks, never smiles, that his eyes are as cold as a winter night." 23, came a deep voice from the doorway. Both women gasped, turning to find a tall figure silhouetted against the hallway light. Clara had never seen Ethan Harrison up close before. He moved like a shadow into the room, his spurs making a soft jingling sound with each deliberate step. His face, partially hidden beneath the brim of a black hat, revealed features that might have been handsome if not hardened by years of violence. A scar ran from his right temple to his jaw, and his eyes, Clara was surprised to find, weren't cold at all, but a warm amber that seemed to hold something like sorrow. 23 men, he repeated, his voice low and unexpectedly gentle. "All of whom drew on me first." His gaze settled on Clara. "I believe we have matters to discuss, Miss Winters, alone." Sarah squeezed Clara's hand before hurrying past Ethan, casting a frightened glance his way. "You've come to inspect your purchase?" Clara asked bitterly once they were alone. A flicker of something pain, perhaps, crossed his face. "I've come to offer you a choice, Miss Winters." "A choice?" Clara laughed humorlessly. "That's more than your father offered mine." Ethan removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair that curled slightly at the ends. Without the hat shadowing his features, he looked younger, less forbidding. "My father's actions aren't mine, though I'm often made to answer for them." He moved to the window, keeping a respectful distance. "The arrangement between our fathers can proceed as planned. We'll marry on Sunday, and your father's debts will be forgiven." He paused. "Or we can pretend to marry. You'll have my name and protection, but nothing more will be expected of you. After 1 year, when the gossip has died down, you can quietly leave." I'll provide you with enough money to start fresh elsewhere. Clara studied him suspiciously. Why would you do that? Because, Ethan said softly, despite what you've heard, I'm not in the business of forcing women to marry me. He looked out at the darkening sky. I have my reasons for agreeing to this arrangement, but they don't include making you miserable. Clara felt her preconceptions shifting, like sand beneath her feet. And my father? Will he be safe? You have my word. The way he said it, simple, direct, made Clara believe him despite herself. Why should I trust you? Your reputation. My reputation, Ethan interrupted, is carefully cultivated to keep people at a distance. It serves its purpose. He put his hat back on. Think about my offer. I'll return tomorrow for your answer. As he turned to leave, Clara found herself asking, the 23 men, is it true? Ethan paused at the doorway. Yes, and I remember every face, every name, and every night I can't sleep because of them. Without another word, he disappeared into the hallway, leaving Clara with more questions than she'd had before. As she prepared for bed that night, Clara realized that Ethan Harrison might be dangerous, but he wasn't the mindless killer she had imagined. There was intelligence in those amber eyes, and perhaps most surprisingly kindness. Whatever his secrets, Clara found herself curious to uncover them. Perhaps this forced marriage wouldn't be her downfall after all. It might even be her salvation. The following day, Clara woke before dawn, her mind still wrestling with Ethan Harrison's unexpected proposition. The first light of morning filtered through her curtains as she dressed in a simple blue dress that matched her eyes. Her decision had crystallized sometime during the restless night. She would accept his offer of a marriage in name only. It wasn't ideal, but it offered protection for her father and eventual freedom for herself. Clara found herself at the small creek that ran behind their property, a place she'd always sought solace when troubled. The water gurgled over smooth stones, its steady rhythm calming her nerves. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the approaching footsteps until a shadow fell across the water. Your father said I might find you here, Ethan said, standing a respectful distance away. Today, without his long black coat and with his sleeves rolled up against the morning heat, he looked less like the feared gunslinger and more like any other man in town. I've considered your offer, Clara said, rising to her feet and smoothing her skirts. I'll marry you, Mr. Harrison, under the conditions you proposed. Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. Then we have an agreement. He hesitated before adding, you should know something about me, Miss Winters. About why I agreed to this arrangement. Clara waited, curious despite herself. My father is dying, Ethan said flatly. Consumption. The doctors give him 6 months. His last wish is to see me settled, as he puts it. A bitter smile touched his lips. He believes a wife might rehabilitate my character. And will it? Clara asked. Ethan's amber eyes met hers. There are things about me that can't be changed, Miss Winters. But I can promise you safety and respect for as long as you bear my name. Something in his candor touched Clara. I believe you, she said simply. There's more, Ethan continued. My father controls much of my inheritance through legal restrictions. Marriage removes those restrictions. Once he's gone, I intend to sell everything and leave this territory. Where will you go? North, maybe Canada, somewhere my reputation hasn't preceded me. He studied her face. Our arrangement gives you freedom eventually, and me freedom immediately. It serves us both. Clara nodded slowly. Then it seems we each have something to gain. Indeed. Ethan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. This was my mother's. If we're to be convincing, you should have it. Inside the box was a delicate gold ring with a small emerald. It was modest compared to what the son of Judge Harrison could afford, but somehow more meaningful because of it. It's beautiful, Clara murmured. She was a good woman, Ethan said quietly. Nothing like my father. He cleared his throat. I've arranged for us to live in the old Miller cabin after the wedding. It's remote enough to give you privacy, but close enough to town that you won't be isolated. Clara was surprised by his thoughtfulness. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Ethan, he corrected. If we're to be husband and wife, even in pretense, you should use my given name." "Ethan," Clara repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It felt intimate, this small concession. The wedding took place that Sunday as planned. The small church in Redemption Creek was filled with curious onlookers, most drawn by the spectacle of the notorious Ethan Harrison taking a bride. Clara wore her mother's wedding dress, altered hastily by Sarah's skilled hands. Judge Harrison, a large man with a booming voice and cold eyes that revealed where the ruthlessness in his son might have originated, presided over the ceremony with obvious satisfaction. Clara's father looked both relieved and ashamed as he gave her away. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan surprised Clara by taking her hand gently and placing a chaste kiss on her knuckles, rather than her lips, a gesture that appeared loving to observers, but maintained the boundaries they had established. The celebration afterward was modest, held at the town's only hotel. Clara noticed how people gave Ethan a wide berth, conversations hushing when he passed. Yet she also noticed other things, how he politely thanked the servers, how he made sure she always had a fresh drink, how his eyes constantly scanned the room as if assessing threats. "Your husband doesn't seem as fearsome today," Sarah whispered when they had a moment alone. "Though I still can't believe you went through with it." "People aren't always what rumors make them out to be," Clara replied, watching as Ethan endured a conversation with the town banker, his posture rigid but composed. As evening fell, they departed for the Miller cabin. Ethan drove the wagon with Clara beside him, the silence between them comfortable rather than strained. The cabin was small but well-maintained, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a cozy sitting area with a stone fireplace. "The second bedroom is yours," Ethan said, carrying her trunk inside. "I've had it prepared for you." Clara was touched by the care evident in the room, fresh linens on the bed, wildflowers in a jar by the window, even a small bookshelf with several volumes. "Thank you," she said, genuinely moved. "This is more than I expected." Ethan shrugged. "We may not have chosen this situation, but we can make it bearable." He hesitated at the doorway. "I ride patrol for my father's properties. I'll often be gone for days at a time. You'll have your privacy. What should I tell people when they ask about?" Clara gestured vaguely, uncomfortable with the implication. "Let them think what they will," Ethan replied. "People believe what they want to believe." That night, as Clara lay in her new bed listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the cabin settling, she heard Ethan moving quietly in the other room. There was the sound of a bottle being uncorked, then silence. Later, she thought she heard him speaking softly, as if to himself, or perhaps to ghosts that only he could see. 23 men, she thought. What kind of man counts as kills, but also remembers their names? What kind of feared gunslinger ensures his unwanted bride has flowers in her room? Ethan Harrison was a puzzle, and despite herself, Clara was becoming increasingly determined to solve it. 3 weeks into their unusual marriage, Clara had established a routine at the Miller cabin. She tended a small vegetable garden, kept the cabin in order, and read voraciously from the books Ethan continued to bring her whenever he returned from town. True to his word, he was often absent, sometimes for days at a time, patrolling the vast Harrison properties that stretched across the county. On this particular morning, Clara was hanging laundry in the yard when she spotted a rider approaching. It wasn't Ethan, whose distinctive black horse she would have recognized immediately. Instead, it was a woman Judge Harrison's housekeeper, Mrs. Pembroke, a stern-faced widow who had always regarded Clara with thinly veiled contempt. "Mrs. Harrison," the woman said stiffly, dismounting with surprising agility for someone her age. "The judge requests your presence for dinner this evening." Clara felt a flutter of anxiety. She had successfully avoided her father-in-law since the wedding. "I'm afraid my husband isn't here, Mrs. Pembroke. He's not expected back until tomorrow." "The judge is aware," Mrs. Pembroke replied. "He specifically asked for you to come alone. 6 o'clock. Don't be late." Without waiting for a response, she remounted and rode away, leaving Clara with a sense of foreboding. By late afternoon, Clara had changed into her best dress, a green cotton that brought out the auburn highlights in her brown hair. She hitched the wagon herself and set off for the Harrison estate, her stomach tight with apprehension. Judge Harrison's home was the grandest in the county, a sprawling two-story structure with white columns and expansive grounds. As Clara approached, she couldn't help comparing the opulence to the modest cabin she now shared with Ethan, finding she preferred the cabin's simple comforts. The judge greeted her in his study, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound books that Clara suspected were more for show than reading. "My dear daughter-in-law," he boomed, his smile not reaching his eyes. "How kind of you to join me. I've been eager to hear how married life suits you." "It suits me well enough, sir," Clara replied carefully. "Does it?" The judge gestured for her to sit while he poured 2 glasses of brandy. "I find that curious, given my son's temperament. Ethan has been nothing but respectful," Clara said truthfully. The judge's eyebrows rose. "Respectful? Is that what a new bride desires from her husband? Mere respect?" He handed her a glass she didn't want but took anyway. "I had hoped his savage nature might have been tempered by a woman's touch, but reports suggest he's unchanged. Still the solitary Wolf, still prowling my lands alone." Clara sipped the brandy to avoid responding immediately, the liquid burning her throat. "Perhaps you don't know your son as well as you believe, Judge Harrison." A dangerous gleam appeared in the older man's eyes. "And you think you do, after mere weeks?" He laughed coldly. "My dear, I created Ethan. I molded him into what he is. Do you know how many men he's killed?" 23, Clara answered automatically. 27 now, the judge corrected with disturbing pride. "There was trouble on the north boundary last week. He didn't tell you?" He seemed pleased by her surprised expression. "Of course not. Ethan shares nothing of himself. Not with me, not with you, not with anyone." Clara set down her glass. "Why did you really ask me here, Judge Harrison?" The judge studied her for a moment. "Perceptive. Good, you'll need that." He leaned forward. "I want to know if my son is honoring his marital obligations. Is he giving me the grandchildren that will continue the Harrison name?" Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That's a private matter between husband and wife." "Nothing is private in my family," the judge snapped. "My sources tell me you maintain separate bedrooms. That my son often doesn't return home for days. That there's no affection between you." Anger flared in Clara's chest. "Your sources are mistaken," she lied smoothly. "And I find it disturbing that you would spy on your son and his wife." "Not spying, my dear. Ensuring the terms of our agreement are met." The judge's voice hardened. "Your father's debts were considerable. It would be unfortunate if I were forced to reconsider our arrangement." The threat hung in the air between them. Clara realized with sudden clarity that her father remained in danger despite her sacrifice. "Our marriage is real," Clara insisted, meeting the judge's gaze steadily. "Whatever your sources may claim." Dinner was a tense affair, with the judge probing for details of her life with Ethan. Clara deflected as best she could, creating a fiction of domestic harmony that couldn't have been further from the truth. By the time she left, darkness had fallen, making the journey home treacherous. The wagon wheel caught a rut about a mile from the cabin, breaking the axle and leaving Clara stranded in the darkness. With no choice but to walk, she gathered her skirts and set off, the night sounds of the wilderness closing in around her. She had covered perhaps half the distance when she heard hoofbeats approaching rapidly. Fear spiked through her. Night riders in this territory were rarely friendly until she recognized the silhouette of Ethan on his black stallion. "Clara!" His voice carried a note of genuine concern she hadn't heard before. He dismounted quickly, reaching her in long strides. "Are you hurt?" "The wagon broke down," she explained, surprised by how relieved she felt at his appearance. "I'm fine, just walking home." Ethan's face was shadowed in the moonlight, but she could see his jaw tighten. "You were at my father's." "It wasn't a question. He summoned me," Clara confirmed. He threatened to reconsider his arrangement with my father if he doesn't get what he wants." "And what does he want?" Clara hesitated. "Grandchildren. Proof that our marriage is real." Ethan was silent for a long moment. Then, "Come," It's not safe here. He helped her onto his horse and mounted behind her, one arm securing her as they rode through the darkness. Back at the cabin, Ethan built a fire while Clara changed into dry clothes. When she emerged from her room, she found him staring into the flames, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "My father will continue to pressure you," Ethan said without preamble. "He's a man who doesn't accept defiance." Clara sat across from him. "He mentioned trouble on the north boundary. He said ... 4 more men." Ethan's eyes closed briefly. "Rustlers, they drew first." He took a long drink. "Always the same excuse, isn't it? They drew first. As if that absolves everything. Does it not?" Clara asked softly. "Killing changes you," Ethan replied, his voice rough, "even when justified. Each death takes something from you that you never get back." He looked at her directly. "Is that what you want to hear? That the rumors are true? That I'm the monster they say I am?" "I don't think you're a monster," Clara said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I think you're a man who's done what he felt necessary to survive." Ethan studied her face as if searching for mockery or deceit, finding neither. "My father will continue to threaten your family," he said finally, "unless he believes our marriage is legitimate. What do? We convince him." Ethan set down his glass. "We appear in town together. We attend social functions as a couple. We create the illusion he demands." Clara nodded slowly. "A performance." "Yes," Ethan hesitated. "It will mean certain intimacies. In public. Nothing inappropriate, but enough to convince observers." "I understand," Clara said, though her heart quickened at the thought. Ethan rose to stoke the fire. "There's something else you should know." His back was to her, shoulders tense. "My father is worse. The doctor says he has 3 months at most." "I'm sorry," Clara said automatically. Ethan turned, a bitter smile touching his lips. "Are you? The man has made your life miserable." "I'm sorry for you," Clara clarified. "Whatever your feelings toward him, he's still your father." Something vulnerable crossed Ethan's face, quickly masked. "Get some rest, Clara. Tomorrow we begin our performance." As Clara lay in bed that night, she realized that somewhere in the past 3 weeks, her fear of Ethan Harrison had transformed into something else entirely, something that felt dangerously like understanding, perhaps even affection. The notorious gunslinger was revealing himself to be a complex man trapped in circumstances partly of his own making, but largely forced upon him by a manipulative father. And Clara was beginning to suspect that playing the role of Ethan's loving wife might prove far more challenging than she had anticipated, not because it would be difficult to pretend, but because it might not require much pretending at all. The Autumn Fair in Redemption Creek was the social event of the season, drawing families from across the county for competitions, trading, and celebration. Clara and Ethan arrived together, her hand resting in the crook of his arm, their first public appearance as a united couple. Their entrance caused a ripple of whispers and stares. "Everyone's watching us," Clara murmured, acutely aware of Ethan's proximity. "Let them," he replied, his voice low. "It's what we want." The past 2 weeks had been a careful exercise in crafting their illusion. They had dined together at the hotel restaurant, attended Sunday services side by side, and even strolled through town on market days. Each outing included subtle touches, his hand at the small of her back, her fingers lingering on his arm, shared smiles that appeared genuine enough to convince onlookers. What Clara hadn't anticipated was how natural these gestures would become, or how her heart would quicken when Ethan's hand found hers. Their private moments at the cabin remained respectful and distant, but something was shifting between them, unacknowledged but undeniably present. Judge Harrison watched them from across the fairgrounds, his hawkish gaze missing nothing. Despite his declining health, he remained an imposing figure, commanding deference from everyone who approached him. "My father's enjoying the show," Ethan observed wryly. "Shall we give him something to really talk about?" Before Clara could respond, Ethan drew her toward the dance platform where couples were gathering for a lively reel. "I don't know if this is wise," she protested weakly. "Everyone knows you don't dance." "Perhaps marriage has changed me," Ethan replied with a rare hint of humor. To Clara's surprise, Ethan was a competent dancer, guiding her through the steps with unexpected grace. His hand at her waist was firm but gentle, his movements confident. When the music required them to come together, their faces inches apart, Clara felt breathless in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. "Where did you learn to dance?" she asked as they circled each other. "My mother insisted," Ethan answered. "She said a gentleman should know how to move with purpose in more than just a gunfight." Clara laughed genuinely, drawing curious glances from nearby dancers, unaccustomed to seeing the feared gunslinger in such a light. As the afternoon progressed, Clara noticed a gradual shift in how people interacted with them. Some of the wariness toward Ethan seemed to soften in the face of his evident attention to his wife. Clara overheard fragments of conversation. "Never seen Harrison so normal, and she must be a good influence on him." Their performance was working, perhaps too well. Clara found herself forgetting at times that this was all pretense, especially when Ethan looked at her with those amber eyes that seemed to see beyond her carefully maintained composure. The peaceful atmosphere shattered when 3 riders thundered into the fairgrounds, their horses lathered and wild-eyed. The lead rider, a ranch hand from the Harrison property, spotted Ethan and called out urgently, "Harrison, trouble at North Fork." Bradshaw and his boys crossed the boundary line. The crowd parted instantly, all eyes turning to Ethan. Clara felt him stiffen beside her, his expression hardening into the mask of the gunslinger she had first feared. "How many?" Ethan asked, his voice flat. 7, maybe 8, the ranch hand reported breathlessly. "They've taken over the line cabin and say they won't leave until they speak with the judge himself." Judge Harrison pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with anger. "Bradshaw thinks he can challenge me on my own land?" He turned to Ethan. "Handle it. Show them what happens to those who defy the Harrisons." Clara saw something dark pass between father and son, an unspoken command that chilled her. "No," she said, before she could stop herself. All eyes turned to her in shock. "Clara," Ethan warned quietly. "No," she repeated, louder this time. "Enough men have died over land disputes. There must be another way." Judge Harrison's eyes narrowed dangerously. "This is not your concern, girl." "It is my concern," Clara countered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Your son, my husband, has killed enough men on your orders. Each death takes something from him that he can never recover. I won't stand by and watch you send him to add more ghosts to those that already haunt him." A stunned silence fell over the crowd. No one had ever spoken to Judge Harrison this way, especially not in public. "How dare you?" the judge began, but Ethan stepped forward, placing himself slightly between Clara and his father. "She's right," Ethan said, his voice carrying across the now silent fairgrounds. "I'll go to North Fork, but to talk, not to kill. Bradshaw has a legitimate grievance over water rights that you've ignored for years, father." The judge's face contorted with rage. "You would defy me? After everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done to me," Ethan corrected quietly. He turned to the ranch hand. "Tell Bradshaw I'll meet him at North Fork at sundown, alone, to negotiate." As the riders departed, Judge Harrison grabbed Ethan's arm. "You're making a mistake. Weakness will be your downfall." "No, father," Ethan replied, removing the judge's hand firmly. "Your kind of strength has been my downfall. I'm choosing a different path." The judge's gaze shifted to Clara. "This is your doing. You've softened him." "Your son was never as hard as you wanted him to be," Clara replied. "That was your failure, not his strength." Judge Harrison's face drained of color, whether from rage or his illness, Clara couldn't tell. He staggered slightly, and 2 townsmen moved to support him. "Get me home," he ordered, his voice weaker than before. As they led him away, he called back, "This isn't finished, Ethan." When they were alone at the edge of the fairgrounds, Clara turned to Ethan, suddenly uncertain. "I shouldn't have spoken that way. I've made things worse." Ethan studied her face. "No one has ever defended me before," he said softly. "Not once in my entire life." "Someone should have," Clara replied simply. Ethan reached out slowly, his fingers brushing the strand of hair from her face with unexpected tenderness. "I need to go to North Fork. I know. This could end badly," he warned. "Bradshaw has reason to hate me. I killed his brother 2 years ago." Clara caught his hand before he could withdraw it. "Then give him reason to stop hating you. Break the cycle, Ethan." Something shifted in Ethan's eyes, a resolution, a decision made. "Come home to me," he said, and for the first time since their wedding day, he bent and pressed his lips to hers in a gentle kiss that felt nothing like pretense. Clara watched him right away, her heart torn between fear and a new fragile hope. Their marriage had begun as an arrangement of convenience, a performance to satisfy others. Somewhere along the way, it had become something else entirely, something real and precious and worth fighting for. At the cabin that evening, Clara paced anxiously, watching the sun sink below the horizon. When hoofbeats finally approached hours later, she rushed outside, a lantern held high. Ethan dismounted slowly, exhaustion evident in every movement. His clothes were dusty but unbloodied, his gun still holstered. "Bradshaw?" Clara asked tentatively. "We talked," Ethan replied. "Really talked for the first time. He had old survey maps that prove his claim. The boundary line was moved 20 years ago by my father." He removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. "No one died today, Clara. We reached an agreement that benefits both sides." Relief flooded through her. "Your father won't be pleased." "My father suffered another attack after leaving the fair," Ethan said heavily. "The doctor says he won't last the week." Clara reached for his hand. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I made my peace with losing my father years ago," Ethan replied. "But I've been thinking about what comes after. When he's gone, when I can finally leave this place." He hesitated. "Our arrangement was that you could go your own way after a year." "Yes," Clara agreed, her heart suddenly tight in her chest. Ethan's eyes met hers, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "What if I asked you to come with me? Not as part of our arrangement, not as a performance for others, but because I've come to care for you in ways I never expected." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. "I would say yes," she whispered, "because somewhere between fearing you and understanding you, I found myself loving you." Ethan drew her into his arms, his embrace tentative first, then secure. "I've been alone my entire life," he murmured against her hair. "Until you." That night, as they sat before the fire planning their future, a small ranch in Colorado, perhaps, far from the reputation that had defined Ethan for so long, Clara reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. A forced marriage to the most feared gunslinger in the territory had become her most unexpected blessing. Ethan Harrison would always carry the weight of his past, the memories of 27 men whose lives he had taken. But with Clara beside him, he had found a reason to lay down his guns, to become the man he might have been without his father's toxic influence. And Clara, who had once been little more than a bargaining chip in a game between powerful men, had found her own strength and voice. Their beginning had been built on deception and necessity, but their future would be founded on something far stronger: truth, understanding, and a love that had bloomed in the most unlikely soil. As Ethan reached for her hand across the small table, his amber eyes warm in the firelight, Clara knew with certainty that sometimes life's most difficult trials lead to its greatest joys. And sometimes, the most feared man in the territory could have the gentlest heart, a heart that now belonged to her.